It's a beautiful early autumn afternoon in New England at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Time for the first practice for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series teams. And the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Championship is on. Hi, everybody. Steve Burns, Larry McReynolds, and Jeff Hammond. Jimmy Johnson is chasing history, boys, trying to become the first driver to win 4 consecutive championships. And Larry Mack, he does it on a racetrack that's difficult. Now, let's take a look at the points after the last race at the Richmond International Raceway that determined who would be in the chase and who wouldn't. Now, guys, this is what the points would have looked like under the old point structure, but each driver gets 5,000 points and then 10 points per win. So there are your reset points. Mark Martin in the #1 seed with 10 races remaining in this 2009 season. And Larry, we get started on a track that is a deceptively fast and challenging racetrack.
Well, and unpredictable, a lot like our 2009 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series season. Very unpredictable. If you look at the last 9 races here, we've had 9 different winners. Now, we try to give you the why or our opinion, and I think one reason we come here twice a year, only 3 months apart. The racetrack is significantly different when we come back here in the fall. It's a lot cooler. It has more grip. This race is a lot of times won on strategy, on fuel mileage. Not to dilute Kurt Busch's win a year and a half ago in the summertime of 2008 or Joey Logano's win this past June, but obviously Mother Nature played a huge role in the outcome of those. The good news is Mother Nature, the only thing she's going to do this weekend is have the sun shining on us. But the other thing about the chase, you saw we've re-racked these 12 drivers, 40 points separating. Even though the chase is 10 races long, which is a lot of races, that's almost a third of our season, I think it's so important, and those 12 teams will tell you the same thing, to come out of the box here at Loudon with a good, solid finish. Not saying you have to win the race like this guy did a year ago, but come out of here with a solid top 5 or top 10 finish.
And Jeff, rightly so, a lot of focus, a lot of attention paid to the chasers like Greg Biffle, but you know what? 43 drivers will start every one of these final races.
That's right, Stephen. When you take a look at the guys basically from 13th back to 24th, the interesting part is you look at Kyle Busch, you look at a guy like Matt Kenseth, but the main thing has to be the fact that out of that group, they've won 8 races this year, but in the previous years, 9 out of these 12 drivers, they wound up winning races at the chase races. So to me, they're spoilers. They're the kind of guys that can take points off the board and can have a huge effect as far as how the end of this chase is. Because guys like Kevin Harvick, Casey Mears, you know, again, Matt Kenseth, you just never know when those guys are going to wind up winning a race. And it could start this weekend. And like Larry's saying, you know, you need to come out here with some momentum. But if one of those other guys can happen to steal some points, well, all they're worried about is trying to win races and trying to make their sponsor and their teams happy.
You know, you look at Tony Stewart there, the 14 car, and of course that's the only driver that's won championships under both formats. But the thing about it, he took the points lead after Dover, Delaware, after a top 5 finish, and that's the earliest in the season Tony has ever led the points. The other 2 times he led it early in the season, the 2 years that he actually won the championship.
21 starts here at New Hampshire for Tony Stewart, 2 wins, 11 top 5s. An interesting thing, this is a challenging track, Jeff, but a lot of the drivers say this is a good place to start the chase.
I think it is. Again, you know, it's a short track, it's a fast short track. With the changes they've made here in this racetrack, it's a better place to race than what I think it was in years past. And right quick, Steve, before we go too much further, that 96 car in behind him, normally driven by Bobby Labonte, right now is being driven by Eric Darnell. And guys, I think he's going to school on Tony Stewart, trying to figure out what it's going to take here. But now Eric was very good at Milwaukee in the nationwide cars as well as the Craftsman Truck Series, you know, where he raced them before. So flat racetrack like this, he's looking pretty strong, at least early in the practice. But going back to Tony Stewart and the rest of these guys as far as the chase is concerned, yeah, I think they got to be happy coming up here, having an opportunity not to have to worry about aerodynamics and everything like that. But here, Larry, you've really got to work on your handling package. I mean, getting the attitude of that car, keeping it working from the center off is so important here if you want to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 1-mile racetrack, but the teams treat it almost like they did the race last weekend at Richmond at the 3/4 mile racetrack. This has some long straightaways, but it's all about getting through the corner. Your driver can normally kind of dictate the entrance. through the middle and on the exit. That's what you have to focus on, whether it's qualifying or whether it's race setup.
Matt Kenseth, 19 times he started here at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. 5 top 5 finishes.
You know, honestly, I don't know that this group is worried right now about winning a race, another race. I think they're more worried about just getting back competitive when you look at the way they run last week at Richmond, finishing 25th.
And
Never
Larry,
a factor.
Larry, as Jeff started to talk about here in the Open, a lot of guys that could play a dark horse or, let's say, spoiler role with 10 to go.
Yeah, he really is. Again, we talk about Matt Kenseth right there. He's won the first 2 races of 2009. We know how good Matt is. He's been in every chase since its inception. He's won the championship before. So this car, even though they struggled, their main mission right now is not only to get competitive, to get back to victory lane. Clint Boyer the same way. Kevin Harvick. Here's another guy. Kyle Busch comes in here with 4 wins. To me, guys, no matter where we go from here on out, remaining 10 races, this guy has got to be one of the top guys as far as winning that race. I mean, he's got nothing else to do but prove to everybody, hey, I should have been in the chase. We made a little bit of a mistake one place, maybe Daytona, having an engine problem during the course of the year that kept him out of being a part of this chase. He'd love to go in there and win all 10 races and say, ha, 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 what could have been.
You know, I don't think it was documented last week well enough on the broadcast just how close the battle for that 12th spot was with this 18 car that finished 5th at Richmond and Brian Vickers, who finished 7th, because Kyle Busch only missed the chase by 8 points. And that's the closest margin in the 6-year history of the chase. Brian Vickers was battling the 77 car and the 29 car, and honestly, those guys could care less about Brian Vickers making the chase. Had he have lost those 2 spots, we would be talking about this 18 car being in the chase this year.
Yeah, right there at the end, the race between Sam Hornish and the 83 car was incredible, trying to get that extra 5 points he really needed.
Well, Brian Vickers, the last driver to make it in the chase, and you look at our schedule here on Speed, NASCAR Live with John Roberts at 1:30. Denny Hamlin joins us on trackside with Mike Skinner. Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice from New Hampshire is brought to you by X-Men Origins, Wolverine on Blu-ray and DVD today. A 90-minute practice underway, just 10 minutes in. Beautiful weather here. A high today, 69 degrees. Jimmy Johnson is quickest earlier, joining us down in the garage. Wendy Venturini and Bob Dillner, and we begin with Wendy.
Well, thank you, Steve. A beautiful, chilly morning in Loudon. We're enjoying the fall temperatures. Now, of course, you guys mentioned Brian Vickers being the last one to make it into the chase. Well, he's the first one in the garage area to experience problems this morning. Brian Vickers was not getting the proper fuel pressure going into the middle of the turn. It was going down to 15. He switched boxes. He switched batteries. That did not fix the problem. He said in the center of the corner, it would start to cut off. It would stumble and it wouldn't run. So they came in right away. He only ran about 4 laps. They are making a fuel pump change on this race car. Hopefully Brian Vickers can get back out there, and that will solve the problem right now with Brian Vickers. Let's head over to Bob Dillner.
Well, Wendy, we are enjoying this beautiful New England day, and the Hendrick cars as well, 3 of them in the chase. And there is a difference in philosophies up and down pit road right here in the garage area. The Hendrick cars are all in qualifying trim. Mark Martin, 3rd quick so far. He is reporting that the car is very lacking in grip right now. He was losing the rear end of the car. Jimmy Johnson just made his mock qualifying run, the first one of this session, and they plan, as far as all the Hendrick cars, to stay in that mode because they know tomorrow they'll have a practice session where they can practice race runs. So right now, Mark Martin, Jimmy Johnson, and Jeff Gordon in that qualifying mode for ever important qualifying coming up later at Loudon, guys.
Well, Bob, news this morning broke about 10:25 this morning that Mark Martin has been signed to a contract extension with Hendrick Motorsports through the 2011 season. He'll have primary sponsorship from GoDaddy.com for 20 races, 2010 and then again 2011. So the news is Mark Martin signed full seasons through 2011, Jeff.
Now let's try to figure this out. They basically had to beg him to run a season. Now he's leading the points coming in here, and he says, well, you know, guys, I'm having so much fun right now. Not only will I drive for you next year, but, well, shucks, I'll just go ahead and sign for 2011.
Well, he told us in January at Daytona during preseason Thunder Fan Fest, whatever we call it now. He goes, I know how Brett Favre feels. Well, Brett Favre came back, and so is Mark Martin.
You know, I'm looking at Sam Hornish Jr. in 77 car sitting here on the grid. It looks like he's waiting to make a practice qualifying run, and right now he's 5th quickest. But the reason we talked about the Hendrick cars. Bob talked about the 48 car and the Hendrick group working on qualifying. I talked to Travis Geisler this morning, the crew chief of this car, and he said, Larry, we run so good at Loudon, at Phoenix. You go back to Richmond last week, they finished 8th. There's Jimmy Johnson actually talking to one of his teammates right now, Mark Martin. But Travis said, our problem at the flat tracks, we race great, but we qualify terrible. At Richmond last week, they qualified 33rd. Travis said, we are on full tilt for qualifying. Jeff, I looked at the car. There's no oil cooler on it. There's no radiator fan. There's not even a tachometer on that 77 car right now. They are treating today as a qualifying day only. I said, you're going to have a lot of work to do before tomorrow. He said, oh, yeah, but we want to show Sam that we're giving him every effort we can to qualify up front where we don't have to fight the whole race to get there.
No, you're right about that. I think that's one of the things that when you go back and you look at some of the teams that have struggled, that are maybe not in the chase right now, most notably the Roush Fenway cars. I think Matt Kenseth and several of his other teammates, they struggled in qualifying, and so has Richard Childress Racing. They haven't had the qualifying effort that they were having a year ago. Remember one time when every time you saw Jeff Burton go out in that RCR number 31, you had to consider him a challenger for the pole. So I think qualifying, we talk about how important it is. Sometimes I think we take it almost like it's just part of what we have to do, but it is huge. You get your own pit, get track position. It's so much easier on your driver mentally. You give him basically a boost when you drop the green flag.
To underscore your story, Monday, Chad Knaus was in the studio with me for This Week in NASCAR. And on Monday, he had already checked the weather forecast for New Hampshire.
Right.
And he said, it looks like rain. That means Mark Martin's going to start from the pole. I mean, he had already figured, his thought process was already that. He'll get pit selection, he'll get the pole.
And that's the reason why Chad Knaus in that 48 car, when you come into Loudon right now, you have basically come, again, here's Chad talking to Jimmy Johnson, trying to describe to him what the car is doing right now after this early part of practice, of why they're so good. I mean, why they're such a formidable duo is they don't overlook anything. Chad Knaus, if he gets beat, it's not because he didn't do his homework. It's because the other guy was just better on that given day. And it's the same way for Jimmy Johnson. And Steve, one thing we saw Jimmy talking to Mark, I've been ecstatic about turning on the news, depending on which news channel you're watching, whether it's Fox or ABC. Our guys, and I say that, the ones that are involved in the chase, big week up in New York, doing a lot of media stuff with all the networks trying to let everybody know the chase has started. It's really the exciting part of our season as far as who's going to wind up being the 2009 champion. And to see these guys on television talking about, each other, it's kind of, I guess you might say it's fun to watch them having a good time up there together.
It's an exciting time of the year. Our playoffs have started 10 weeks to determine the 2009 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series champion. Hendrick Motorsports cars 1, 2, 3 here in practice.
Get you some of that.
Let's take a look at our quality track description of the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Guys, just over a mile in length, and you look at the banking, talked about it before, she's relatively flat.
Oh yeah, but I tell you, Larry, at least when I used to race here, it was flatter than this, and I would have loved to have that little bit extra from 2 to 7 degrees. Really helps these guys get these cars to turn through the center of the corner. Plus, it widens the groove out. If you want to move up a little bit, that's the beautiful part of what they've improved here at Loudon. It's not a follow the leader deal anymore. You can't take that outside and make it work. That's a good thing about it. Straightaways got a little bit of banking, but how about the straightaway as far as the distance? Pretty long straightaways for basically a flat racetrack.
And I tell you, this race, even though it's a fairly short race, I think it's the perfect length race, 300 laps. The other thing that really can be a challenge here, we see a lot of teams from time to time have problems, is brakes. You enter these corners at a very high rate of speed, and you use an awful lot of brake to get down in these fairly flat corners.
You got 3 races, in a relatively short period of time between Richmond, Loudon, and not to rule out and forget Martinsville, that brakes are going to really be huge as far as these drivers are concerned.
Mark Martin, 25 starts here, but never a visitor to victory lane. He's been second before. Got a lot of top 5, top 10 finishes, but never been to victory lane. By the way, in our track description, Saw the seating capacity 93,500 and change, all but sold out. They just have some single seats available and some standing room only, but pretty much a sellout here at New Hampshire Motor Speedway.
Got a lot of great race fans up here in the Northeast. I mean, they pack this place just about every time we come up here. A lot of campers already here for the weekend, so I'm not really surprised to hear that, Steve.
You know, thinking about Mark Martin, we've been talking about Denny Hamlin and Brian Vickers bringing a lot of momentum into these 10 chase races. But if you look at the 5 car, I think quietly he's bringing momentum in. I talked to Alan Gustafson on Wednesday evening. He said, you know what? I made a huge mistake at Michigan on the fuel strategy. But the thing about it, what they followed it up, the next 3 races, including Richmond last week, 3 top 5 finishes. So this team brings some momentum into these chase races.
Smart race car driver. And I think he understands right now he isn't, maybe not the best position, but you got to believe he's darn close to it. He's been in a long time to win a championship, Steve. And so you can't rule that guy right there out. I mean, his experience, I think, is going to be huge in this chase.
Well, Ryan Newman likes the fact very much, thank you, that we're beginning the chase at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, a 2-time winner here.
And you know, I talked about strategy playing a huge role in the outcome of this race, and we certainly know weather was the biggest factor in June, but when you look at the 39 car, Tony Gibson, the crew chief, trying to stretch that fuel, knew the rains were moving in. He ran out of fuel just moments before the rain moved in and ended up finishing 29th. But talked about Tony Gibson, the crew chief. Here's an interesting nugget about Tony Gibson. Tony Gibson has been a part of winning 3 championships. He was the car chief, which is like the assistant head coach on the 24 car in 1998 and 2002. And how about this one? He was also the car chief to Paul Andrews in 1992 when Alan Kwiecki won the championship that year. You see Tony on top of the truck there.
Wendy has more on that 39 team.
Well, right now, Ryan Newman is 22nd on the practice chart, has run about 12 laps. Crew chief Tony Gibson is trying some things with the right front. They were chattering pretty badly that first time out there, but of course Tony wants to try some things before they go to qualifying trim, and he said, I definitely want to try them today before tomorrow. So they have a game plan set out for this week and exactly what they're trying to accomplish in each practice session. Now, when I sat down with Ryan Newman in New York City the other day, I asked him, now that the chase has started, how hungry are you really for a championship? And he said, you know, I didn't really think about it until we got to this time of the year. And as we got closer and closer, now we're in the final 10 race stretch, he says, I am very hungry for a championship. Of course, for Stewart-Haas Racing as a whole, whether it's Tony or Ryan said he really wants to go for it this year.
And I got to understand, Stewart-Haas Racing, they're the only organization that's got 100% of their entries involved. 2 teams, both of them inside the chase.
And you know, one thing that's contributed to this 14 car and that 39 car being where they're at in the points, certainly this car here in particular has had great performances. But when you look at Stewart-Haas Racing, both teams, 0 DNFs for those 2 teams. So that's huge in itself for a brand new operation.
Right quick, guys. And just thought I'd ask the question, throw it out there. Steve, how many races do you think it's going to take this year? How many races you have to win in the chase for a guy to win? Whether it's Jimmy Johnson, Tony Stewart, how many wins do you think you're going to have, Larry, to win this championship this year?
I think you're going to have to win probably 3 to 4 races, but I think you better top it off with about 4 or 5 top 5s to go along with it.
I was going to say, Biffle won 2 in the chase last year and wasn't really a factor at the end. Let's go to Bob Dillner.
You know, in the last 4 races, Tony Stewart, guys, hasn't been awfully that good, and he was asked about that, and he said, you know what, they don't crown a championship based on the last 4 races entering the chase. He basically said he's got a 1 in 12 shot at winning this one, but Tony Stewart right now pretty happy, and the ironic part about this is, obviously, Stewart-Haas Racing has a relationship with Hendrick. He is in race mode as opposed to those 3 Hendrick cars. Those 3 Hendrick cars on top of the board right now. Tony Stewart looking for balance, and that's why he's way down on the speed charts right now.
Yeah, Tony Stewart just 36th fastest overall. How many wins, Hammond, to win the championship? 3. 3? I'm going with 3.
Unanimous.
Denny Hamlin, former winner here at New Hampshire. He is 16th overall in his FedEx Toyota for Joe Gibbs Racing. Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, Mark Martin, Joey Logano. The quickest, Juan Pablo Montoya just jumped up into the 5th position. Larry talked about Sam Hornish Jr. He's 6th fastest.
You got to believe these guys right here are riding a wave of high momentum coming in here, including the 42. But that 11 winning the other night. Denny's always wanted to win at Richmond. Mike Ford and them, they were finally able to break through and keep the monkey off their back. And right there toward the end when the caution come out, I said, oh no, here we go again. And he's going to wind up losing this thing because somebody's going to, you know, on the restart is going to wind up getting him into trouble. But he was able to hold him off and get that much coveted win. And bringing that kind of momentum in here, I think really has got him on an unbelievable high. And you've got to think he's going to be one of the guys that could upset Jimmy Johnson.
You know what's interesting, he told us on Victory Lane last Saturday night that he and Mike Ford debated about how to treat this Richmond race because they were going into Richmond already locked in. Did they possibly want to save that car for Loudon and maybe take a 2nd or 3rd type of a car there? And they finally concluded we want to approach it as the next race, the most important race, and obviously it paid off as he led 299 of 400 laps.
Jeff Gordon, a 3-time winner here at New Hampshire.
He had a really strong run at Richmond. It looked really good.
That's about as racy as he has looked in a long time. I mean, he and that 11 car had quite the battle. But, Bob, I'm convinced, bad back or not, you give old Gordon something to race, he'll race him as hard as anybody.
And he's got a pretty good race car right now. Remember, they are in qualifying trim mode. He's moving around Robbie Gordon right there. But the only problem he had with his first run is he couldn't see out the rear of the car. So Steve Letarte had the guys go in and adjust that rear view mirror. But think about this. I think a little interesting note is he's in the National Guard car this weekend, which has the yellow ribbon program on that car. He's run that 5 times this year, has finished in the top 5 all 5 times he's done it, including a win at Texas. So things are looking good for Jeff Gordon here this weekend at the Magic Mile.
Well, I know one thing. If he comes up here and winds up winning this race, I don't think I'd be changing that paint scheme the rest of the year. A little bit like Tony Orlando used to sing that song, tie a yellow ribbon around the old little tree.
Well, that yellow ribbon program is a great program, and it helps families for their loved ones who are going into the National Guard. Helps the families transition and prepare while he or she is away.
You know, Jeff talked about the spoilers, and I honestly believe this could be the next guy in line that's a non-chase guy, Kevin Harvick, that 29 car, that could possibly be the guy that gets to victory lane. But when you look at the 9 car here, of course, they're in the chase. They missed the chase last year. Last week, prior to Richmond, which I thought timing was not very good there, they made the announcement that they're going to be moving to Ford for 2010 and also doing the merger with Yates. And then yesterday, the team sent out a release that Mark McArdle, the team's vice president and managing director of competition, through a mutual agreement, had departed operation. So I think Kenny Francis and Casey Kane are smart enough to put all those distractions aside, but you have to believe it is a distraction.
Well, Casey said it on trackside. He said, my guys have been great at blocking out distractions, but I tell you, a guy like Mark McArdle, who's been leading the way for the entire operation, the unknown about how many guys will remain with that organization. You know, there's a lot of talk about engine employees being released. It's going to be a distraction.
It has to be, Steve. I mean, it'd be like all of a sudden getting ready to play the Super Bowl and you fire your general manager. This is what these guys are going into. They're going into the playoffs. The guy that's been kind of leading the ship and making sure everything goes along right is no longer there. They know they're going to be making a big change, which could affect them as far as 2010 is concerned. And Larry, you know this to be true. To be ready for 2010, you've got to start now. So again, distractions can add up to basically a failure if you're not careful. So I think this story here, watching how Casey and Kenny Francis deal with it, will be huge.
And the story broke last weekend at Richmond that Pat Tryson's going to leave for Michael Waltrip Racing next year. And Kurt Busch said the timing of that is not great. We should be focused on the chase.
But the thing is, I will at least say this much for that entire organization. They put it behind them for Richmond and had a very, very strong showing when it mattered. I mean, they weren't good all night, but right there at the end, Pat made some good calls. Kurt got up on the wheel, and they made a very, very good, strong finish as far as that race is concerned, to have a little bit of momentum coming in here. And hopefully they're both of them professional enough that they can stay focused, get the job done here, and go out on a high note.
Yeah, my wife even asked me the other night, she said, how do you think that announcement's going to affect the 2 car in the chase. I said there's 2 people that can dictate that, Pat Tryson and Kurt Busch. If they focus on 2009 and not worry about 2010, I think that could be a sleeper to win this championship.
And I'll go back to Stephen and using it for instance. Look at what Greg Zipadelli and Tony Stewart did last year. When they knew they were going to be leaving one another, they still finished strong. They had that 20 car in position to win a championship and make some challenges when they needed to. So I think that, you know, there is definitely a model out there to be able to say, let's do this the way we can both hold our heads up high when we walk away.
Jeff, you were talking about sleepers. There's another guy, Marcus Ambrose, who's had a tremendous season. I think he's exceeded everybody's expectations. He could be a sleeper.
Sitting 17th in the points. Okay, what's significant about 17th? That's higher in the points than Dale Earnhardt Jr. It's higher in the points than Kevin Harvick. It's higher in the points than a lot of guys that's been here for a long time.
I think he's just lurking. He is, I mean, any racetrack you go to, Frankie Kerr and Marcus Ambrose, if they get the right setup underneath this car, they could wind up sneaking out there and saying, you know, let me have this race. It belongs to us, including here in Loudon.
Still Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, and Mark Martin, the Hendrick drivers leading the way. You see Pat Tryson, some of his lieutenants working on that car. Stay with us. Jamie McMurray in the 26 car made a visit to Fenway Park last night. John Henry, part owner of Roush Fenway Racing, hosted a bunch of the Roush drivers.
Guys, I know everybody loves watching speed, but you can see where modern technology has gone to. These are sprint car teams that are got team members up here with their own basically video equipment, and they're videoing practice, just like a Major League Football team would be, or a basketball team. They video these practices, and they'll go back down afterwards and analyze what they're able to see, whether it's their car or some of the competition.
But some of this equipment is a program called, I think it's called Darkfish. And basically, they can see the pattern or the groove that a car runs, and they can overlay where their car runs, and they can compare this. And this is especially huge and used during qualifying.
Yeah, and the thing about it, too, Larry, when you think about it, more than anything else, a picture's worth 1,000 words. You and I have been on top of the truck. We watch the car. We tell the driver, this is what we see. We go down in the corner. But this is the kind of stuff, whether you're watching speed and you basically record it and watch it back, you have your own stuff to compare to it. You love seeing pictures so you can see the attitude of that car.
Jeff, how many teams would you estimate are using that videotape for practices?
I'd say right now probably about a half a dozen, because you got to realize that organizations like RCR, that's covering 3 or 4 teams. Hendrick's probably doing it, covering 3 or 4 teams. Petty's, that's covering 3 or 4 teams. So, you know, you have a half a dozen people up here that are doing this kind of technology, and it's helping, you know, a multitude of cars.
I think Richard Childress Racing, you see Jeff Burton, one of the Richard Childress cars, had his hands full through 3 and 4. I think that was one of the first teams that really started using that Darkfish program, looking at how the cars, you can overlay how they go through the corners and things. This is another guy that could be a spoiler here at this racetrack. He has 29 starts, 4 wins. In fact, in September of 2000, he led all 300 laps of that race. The only time in my career that we use restrictor plates, carburetor restrictor plates anywhere aside from Daytona or Talladega.
Spanked them that day.
Back to the garage and Bob.
Right now in the garage area, Kurt Busch and Pat Tryson talking about how this car is handling. Right now, this team is done with their race trim. They are switching the car over to qualifying trim. They're going to tape it up. They're moving the weight and all sorts of things on this race car. But right now, Kurt and this team came with a different setup than what they normally run. And Kurt says, you know, it feels completely different than what we normally run. It's a little strange, but I actually like it. So they're going to stick with this for tomorrow's practice session. But right now, they are moving over to qualifying trim, Wendy.
And right next door to Kurt Busch is Brian Vickers. Now, they did change that fuel pump. They went back out there, and they continued to have the same exact problems. He said it still doesn't run when he gives it gas. He doesn't know what's going on. The first lap or two, it runs well, he said, but then it will spike to 13 when he gets to the center of the corner. Then he'll come come and coast through the garage, and it's okay, and it starts to run again. So they are scratching their heads and trying to eliminate every problem that could be wrong with the 83.
Well, remember, these things don't have the fuel pump on the side of the engine like you would expect. It has the cable-driven fuel pump back in the fuel cell area. That's where I saw Ryan Pemberton a while ago. And then that cable, which we know that cable has fought a lot of people. You know, looking at this Miller car, I love what the people at Miller Coors do each year. We have the 2 beer cars in the chase. We have Casey Kane in the Anheuser-Busch car. We have Kurt Busch in this Miller Lite car. What Miller Lite has done, they have challenged, they call it the Beer Car Challenge for Charity. They have challenged the Anheuser-Busch people yesterday with the 2 beer cars in it, that the highest finisher at each race, whoever finishes the highest, that the other company will donate $2,500 to their charity, and then the highest finisher in the chase will donate $25,000. Who loses will donate $25,000. Anheuser-Busch has not accepted the challenge. I'm going to challenge them here on Speed. Take that, because the real winner will be the charities.
Right.
All rise, here comes the king. And I didn't realize you knew so much about beer. I thought you were a wine guy.
Well, every once in a while.
Yeah. One other thing I was going to say, watching that 2 group where they were getting ready for qualifying, they were taping up opera windows and getting all the air intakes blocked up, so that when they get ready to qualify, they treat this thing just like a super speedway, Steve. You don't want to leave anything on the table, because, again, when this field is set later on this afternoon, I guarantee you a couple of hundredths of a second will separate several cars. And right now, that 2 car, they want to make sure they're on the upper end side of it, not the wrong end of it.
Well, Jeff, Jimmy Johnson has put down the fastest lap at a 29.04. We have 40 drivers in the 29-second bracket.
That's what you call stacking them in there, buddy.
A little bit will mean a lot. Now, Joey Logano in his 20 car, making his 3rd start here at New Hampshire. Right now, he's 4th quickest. Remember, this was the guy that won here in June, the youngest winner ever in Sprint Cup at 19 years, 1 month, and 21 days. It was a record that was previously held by his teammate, Kyle Busch.
Looking right there at Ryan Newman, and one of the guys who tried to stretch the fuel and ran out. But that 20 car, Steve, well, they figured out a way to make it go a little bit further.
Came to pit road, red flag, the reins moved in, and I think the word was passed along, you are the winner.
Logano, as we said, 4th quickest. Stay with us here on Speed. A few clouds have rolled in here to the New Hampshire Motor Speedway in Loudon, New Hampshire. Very, very small threat of a shower later today. Qualifying takes place about 3:10.
Yeah, because of that, you take a look at the laps that have been run during this practice session. You'll see real quick where Denny Hamlin's run 37 laps. A.J. Allmendinger's 31. The 1 car, Martin Truex Jr. is 34. So, I mean, a lot of guys are putting laps on this racetrack, anticipating, just in case there is a weather situation, they've got their cars figured out.
Well, there you see the 4 Hendrick cars all in the top 10 right now, with Jimmy Johnson at the top and Dale Earnhardt Jr. right now 7th quickest. Mark Martin has run a total of 7 laps right now. That was a 29.41. His fast lap, as you just saw on the graphic, is a 29.20.
Brian Vickers back out on the track. He's only good enough right now for 31st overall.
But Steve, when you're having the type of problem that he's got right now, it could really just mess up your whole practice. He's not got that many laps on the track, only 9. But a fuel issue, when you get back in the gas and the motor's stumbling, popping, and carrying on, I mean, it just drives a driver crazy. Doesn't help the crew any, but that kind of stuff is not the way you start off a championship run as far as they're concerned. They finished so strong last week at Richmond. They needed to kind of carry that momentum, and just everything kind of happened. Needed to really kind of happen smoothly as far as Loudon's concerned. It's not good for them.
They did not have a good Loudon race back in June. They ended up finishing 35th due to an accident. But when they left there and went to Daytona, that's when that roll of races started. That pretty much took them from 17th to inside the top 12 after Richmond.
And what's the stat over the last 8 races? He scored more points than any other driver, Brian Vickers.
His worst finish was Bristol, and he finished 12th there.
But guys, you wonder, and we've seen it before. You always go back and you try to analyze, well, did it really make it a difference or not? Have they given everything that they've got to get here, and all of a sudden they're running out of gas as they get ready to start this chase?
Did they use all their energy?
Exactly.
I think that's the question. Now, Clint Boyer here in the 33 car, of course, the last bullet that Richard Childress had the last few races before the chase, but he ended up 15th. But who would ever forget back in 2007, he was one of the only chase drivers to come to Loudon without a win that year. Well, he put all that to rest by sitting on the pole and leading 222 laps to get his first career win.
And I like him as a spoiler role this time also, Steve. Again, I think that this team right here is just on the verge of breaking through, whether it's here at Loudon or a place, I mean, like Dover. I mean, these guys, I think, are going to be tough. Because, again, they've got everything to win and really nothing to lose right now.
They can gamble.
They can. They can do some things that nobody else can afford to do that's involved in the chase.
You know, I just saw the right front tire on that 33 car leaned way in at the top. And as I walked through the garage area this morning, it almost made me think that the A-frame was almost broke on some of these cars. But what these cars are doing, we talked about getting your car to turn through the middle of the corner. They're running about maximum negative camber in the right front, which you can't run more than 8 degrees. But the more you lean that tire in at the top, the more it helps the car to turn. You can see, look at the 11 car right there. It almost looks like something's broke, but that's to get the car to turn, having that negative camber in the right front.
And once the car goes down and sets, the wheel gets straight. So it doesn't stay that way all the way around the racetrack.
Ackerman, just the Ackerman.
That's a whole nother story.
Yeah, that's next chapter.
We're past halfway in this 90-minute practice at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway, and you guys, there's pretty amazing statistics surrounding Jimmie Johnson, who's, as we said, trying to win his 4th consecutive championship. He's been in 50 chase races. He's won 14 of them. 14 wins in 50 chase races over the past 5 seasons.
I'm going to give you some other nuggets, and a lot of this is contributed to a lot of hard work by Jeff Hammond leading into the chase. But Jimmie Johnson has won at 9 of the 10 tracks in the chase. The only one he's not won at is Homestead, and I think it's because he goes there just having to finish good. 29 of Johnson's 43 wins have come on the 10 chase tracks, but here's the one that blew me away as I was reading it last night. Since 2004, this team has won 21 more races than any other race team in the Sprint Cup Series garage. Thank you for all your hard work on this, Mr. Jeff.
You're welcome. But the thing is, right now, as we take a look at one of the guys who's been leading this charge, Chad Knaus, crew chief for Jimmie Johnson during all those championship runs. Can you imagine the fact that, are we supposed to just roll over and play dead because Jimmie Johnson's got all these numbers, guys? I mean, just because we're in New England, does it mean because the New England Patriots have won a lot of Super Bowls that nobody else is supposed to play in the biggest game of the year?
Yeah, ask the Buffalo Bills that.
I guarantee you, the thing is right now, my whole point is, everybody out there, they want to be the next guy to unseat Jimmie Johnson, to stop his run, to stop his reign, whether it's Mark, Tony Stewart, Jeff Gordon, it doesn't matter. They want to be the ones to be able to say that, look, he didn't get there because we beat him in the final 10 races of 2009.
I don't have a good feeling about the momentum that the 48 team brings into this chase. They won Indy back in late July. In the 6 races since Indy, 1 top 10 finish, finished 8th at Bristol. That's not the normal 48 coming into the chase.
Bob Dillner.
Kurt Busch 12th quick in this practice session. And Kurt, we were just talking about how good you were because 12th quick in race trim, you haven't even gone over to qualifying trim just yet.
Yeah, it felt like it had more grip than last time here, and I think it's just because of the cooler temperatures. But, you know, so far so good with our Miller Lite Dodge. The way that the guys are smiling and joking, that's what we got to keep doing is just go with the flow and just kind of whatever comes our way, just take it.
This is the type of deal. You've been in this chase before. You've won the championship. Is it to stay as relaxed as possible because this can be a pressure-filled situation?
Yeah, you just try to take it as business as usual and treat it like it's the first time here to Loudon and not think that it's the chase.
Kurt Busch, always good here at this flat track. Kurt Busch, a former winner here.
You know, Steve, he brings up, I think, a real interesting point. This is what you try to do. You know, you want to, try to keep your head clear, be relaxed, not let things stress you out. and hopefully everybody else winds up being that way. I mean, I think that's a great approach. But do you really think that it works, Larry? I mean, I've been there before. You know, you try to turn it off. You try not to listen to the media. You try not to listen to what's going on. And you got to talk about, you know, we got to beat Jimmy. We got to beat Tony. We got to do this. We got to do that.
It's much easier said than done.
Easier said than done. That's exactly what I was thinking also.
Hey, how about this 71 car who has Bobby Labonte back in it for the second race, where he was also in the car at Atlanta. He just jumped up to the 10th place. Again, Bobby will drive this car at the races that the 96 car Hall of Fame Yates Racing, that they have Eric Darnell in that. And of course, Bobby gave this car a great run at Atlanta a few weeks ago, finished 18th down there after qualifying 25th.
Well, Mark Martin's now the quickest, and he's followed by his teammates Jimmy Johnson and Jeff Gordon. Pablo Montoya, 6th overall. Stay with us here on Speed. Practice for the Sylvania 300 continues here at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. 55 minutes in to a 90-minute practice. They qualify at 3:10 this afternoon, 3:10 Eastern. Jeff Gordon just completed his 8th lap.
Steve, his numbers here, he's competed in all 29 races, 3 wins, 3 poles, 13 top 5s, 16 top 10s. But how about this one? He's led a total of 1,205 laps here at New Hampshire Motor Speedway.
And Steve, you brought up the fact about qualifying later on this afternoon. Jeff Gordon got the luck of the draw. He's going to get a chance to go out 33rd. The only guy that's got a better draw than he is a 2-car of Kurt Busch, and one of his teammates, Mark Martin, who's currently the fastest guy out there. He'll go out 35th, right in front of the Golden Home.
We talk about this every week. Starting position, half of the races here have been won from a top 10 starting spot. However, 3 of the last 5 have been won from outside the top 10.
Yeah, it gets kind of confusing about something like that, but if we say it, we'll say it again and again and again. Starting up front is more of an advantage than a negative. Because like I say, even though those guys won from outside the top 10, they had to work extra hard, or they had to kind of like change up the game plan with a little bit of help from Mother Nature maybe to take advantage of it.
You know, Steve, looking at Casey Kane here in the 9 car, right now only 27th quickest. And reading Casey's quotes this week, he said there's no question it's the Loudon, the Martinsville, the Phoenix type of tracks that we need to work on, because even if you look back at Richmond last week, they didn't run that good. They finished 12th. I know they had an agenda, but Bob, I don't know that 9 car is exactly where they want to be so far in this practice.
Yeah, definitely not, Larry. They were in race trim just earlier, and they weren't happy with the balance on that car, but Kenny Francis and the guys said, tell you what, let's work on that some more tomorrow. We got a good platform to work from. This is their first qualifying trim of the day. This is a run that's going to tell the tale possibly of how they will be a little bit later on today in qualifying. So, you know, they know that they need to run well on the long haul, but they also need to really qualify well at a track like this, Hammond, where qualifying is so important because of that track position.
Well, Steve has pointed out to me, Casey just jumped up the 6th quickest, Bob, so looks like they did the right thing as far as during the adjustments going to their qualifying package here. It is working for them, at least early on in this weekend here at Loudon. But guys, let's go back and look at something else here. When we think about, you know, guys like Casey Kane who are involved in this chase, and you see he's only got, you know, Gillette and Petty Enterprises only got 1 car in this chase. Do you think it's an advantage or not? Because realize you got teammates, but only having 1 car in the chase, like Gibbs or like Petty's or Ganassi, Earnhardt. I mean, is that a plus or a minus, Larry? What do you think?
Well, the biggest organization I'll touch on there, you mentioned it, is Joe Gibbs. You know, last year they had all 3 teams in the chase. You look at Jack Roush, who has 2 cars in the chase, including the 99 of Carl Edwards. But Denny Hamlin told us on Victory Lane, it's almost the good news, bad news, the 18 team not being in the chase. The bad news is Joe Gibbs only has 1 bullet in the chase. The good news is I don't have to fight that 18 car for this championship, just maybe for race wins.
Wendy, what's going on with Carl Edwards?
Well, you'll notice that Carl Edwards just jumped up the board a few spots, up to 7th now in 14 laps. Of course, they had just switched over to qualifying run. Keep in mind that Carl Edwards is still on crutches, fans, so when he hops out of that car, he literally is hopping out of the car and hopping around the garage area. But right now, he feels pretty good about that right foot that he did break a couple weeks ago. Carl Edwards also happy with the car. No complaints on Carl in this practice session.
Well, I think the best proof that that foot is not bothering him is go back to the Nationwide Series race last Friday night. Had to start at the rear of the field because of the spark plug issue and won the race. The only thing it affected, no backflips after winning the race.
I bet you that felt strange to him.
What felt strange watching him not do a backflip.
It did. Juan Pablo Montoya also just jumped up. He's now second quick. Michael Waltrip just jumped up to 17th overall in his Toyota.
I'm telling you, this is the team you better keep the eyeball on. I think they've been laying in the weeds. They've just been trying to make the chase. And Wendy, they brought a brand new race car here, just tested at New Smyrna Beach, Florida last week.
And they continue to say what they're going to do after Wong comes in right now. He's happy with this qualifying run that they did. As you can see, he just jumped up the chart. He's had some bad, terrible forward bite according to Juan. He said he loves the middle of the corner. It feels really good, but he's struggling in other parts. He's been tight in the center all practice long, but really good in this qualifying trim so far. They've come a long way since the beginning of practice where he was really loose and sideways on the first few laps when this practice session started.
The thing is right now, Steve, this 42 car, they took the Bulldog basically off his chain at Richmond. You better watch out for him.
Let him loose. Chevrolet's leading the way. Well, aside from the dark clouds, the weather forecasters say we're in for a beautiful weekend here in New England. The temperatures are certainly nice. High today of 68, 69 degrees.
I woke up with Al this morning. He told me it's good to go in New England.
You wake up with Al every morning.
Every morning. He and Stephanie Abrams, 6 a.m.
You're a sad, strange little man.
But
And it took you how long to figure that out?
Robbie Gordon in the 7 car. Right now he is 10th quickest. Robbie had a pretty good weekend
Last week
in his off-road truck. Ended up extending his points lead, I think, with 1 race to go. And of course, he got his very first career win in Sprint Cup here in November 2001. We were talking about the crowds in New England. That's when it dawned on me how special the fans are up here. The Friday after Thanksgiving, because the race was postponed because of 9/11, you couldn't have took a shoehorn and put another person Friday after Thanksgiving in New England here at this 1 mile racetrack. That team finished 24th at Richmond with David Gilliland. Greg Biffle in the 16 car, 6th quickest.
Greg won this race a year ago. Then he won again the next week at Dover, Delaware.
And then finished 3rd at Kansas in the 3rd week of the chase.
Just couldn't sustain that momentum for the rest of the deal. You've got to be consistent as well as being successful.
You know, Steve, I don't know if we've mentioned it. We have 45 cars here. 2 cars will go home. This is Dexter Bean in the 51 car. He's the slowest of our 45 cars. The last time Dexter was at the racetrack was here in June and did not qualify for that race.
He and Derek Cope, the 2 slowest right now on the racetrack. Meanwhile, Kurt Busch and David Stremme have just jumped up. They're 3rd and 4th right now, respectively.
In fact, our bottom 5 cars are all go-home cars. Tony Rain, Scott Speed, Mike Wallace, Derek Cope, and Dexter Bean. 36 car, Michael McDowell. He was in his 36 car last week at Richmond, qualified and finished 41st. And he's one of about, I think it's 3 drivers that's doing double duty here this weekend at Loudon. Actually, we have Kevin Harvick, we have Kyle Busch, we have Dexter, we actually have Michael McDowell, and Eric Almirola, who's in the 09 car. So we have 4 doing double duty with the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. Couldn't read that note, Slot.
Which is a perfect segue. Listen, Larry Mack.
Terrible
Put your
penmanship.
glasses on.
Camping World Truck Series is on at 2:30 tomorrow with Crystal Voda. So when is NASCAR Performance on?
I know. 9:30 on Saturday. as well as a re-air at 11:30 on Sunday.
I totally screwed my promo. It's 11:30 on Saturday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern on Sunday. And we're going to talk about brakes, if you can believe that.
Brakes.
Brakes. Do you want to put the brakes on me a minute ago?
Yes, you was given the wrong times for my show. You're killing me.
How about Big Block Thursday? You want to do that?
Oh, yeah. I can't
Get
wait.
the times right.
Ready.
Chad Knaus is writing his ad-libs for NASCAR Performance.
We'll be taping it later on tonight. And, you know, with Matt Kenseth missing the chase, now Jimmy Johnson, the 48 team, they're the only team to make the chase all 6 years.
And as we watch Sam Hornish doing a little research, do you realize Jimmy Johnson has finished in the top 5 in points every year since 2002 when he started in a full-time campaign?
Again, I would love to be able to be the crew chief of the team that take down Chad Knaus and Jimmy Johnson. I mean, that would be my motivation as far as the chase is concerned, because I think that's just, it'd be something everybody would remember, is who stopped the onslaught of that 48 car.
Sam Hornish, 9th overall in his Mobil 1 Dodge. We go back to Bob Dillner.
Interestingly enough, Jimmy Johnson just had another mock qualifying run on the racetrack, and he said, hey, I like that. Let's stick with that. And crew chiefs here, what's really interesting is Chad Knaus came on the radio and he said, you know what, I'd really like to try one more thing. So they are putting on a new set of front shocks on this number 48 right now. And Chad was wondering if there is actually going to bottom out the splitter. So what they did is they took that spray paint and spray painted the underside of the splitter so that if it does hit, they will tell because that paint will be removed. So Jimmy Johnson, one more run because Chad Knaus wants to here in the garage area. Wendy?
And while, Bob, you were talking, Kyle Busch just jumped from 31st to 10th because of that qualifying trim. They switched over. Now, he's had a pretty tough practice session. They've been terrible loose in and loose off. Very speed sensitive for Kyle Busch. It could not be consistent. According to Kyle, he couldn't be consistent with the speed. The center, right before the center, it wanted to bust loose on him, and he had a right front chatter added onto that. So a lot of issues with the 18, but here's the positive spin on it. Kyle did get a hold of Denny Hamlin this week, of course, to congratulate his teammate for making that chase. But Denny was telling me the story in New York City, how he was really excited that Kyle Busch had mentioned to him, hey man, we want to do everything we can to get Joe Gibbs Racing this championship. But what I learned in New York City are the guys that don't have teammates in the chase, like Casey Kane and Denny Hamlin, that their teammates have stepped up to the plate to try and get a win for these organizations. So I think it's going to be a different kind of chase strategy for some of these race teams.
You know, I feel like I need to say this because I was probably one of the broadcasters that was beating Kyle Busch up about his interviews and things, even when he finished second in a race. He has definitely made some changes in his approach and his attitude. I thought, as he was interviewed last week after missing the chase, that it was a very gracious interview. And I want to commend him for doing that because, as I said, there's Kyle Busch fans out there that want to hear from your driver, whether you win, whether you crash, whether you blow an engine, whether you finish second or 32nd. You owe that to your fans, and certainly Kyle is doing a great job at that right now.
I'll agree with you on that, Larry. I thought he did a really great job along with Matt Kenseth, and missing now his first chase in his career since its inception. We'll take a look at Mark Truex, one of the local favorites here. He's 24th quickest. But guys, you got to understand something too. I think missing the chase, we try to put it in some kind of perspective. It's almost like being chose, as Mark Truex Jr. now has jumped up to third quick on his second lap. It's like choosing up teams when you're in school and all of a sudden realize, you know, you weren't picked. You know, you're going to be frustrated. Your feelings are going to be hurt. If it didn't matter, well, it would be different. But I think for a lot of these drivers that make the chase, right now they're still kind of licking their wounds because their feelings are hurt. They're not in the big game.
Eight drivers have now run sub-29-second laps, including that guy, David Sturmey, in the 12 car. A.J. Allmendinger just jumped up to third quick in his Dodge. Kevin Harvick now the quickest as Jimmy Johnson moves up to fifth.
But we still got 42 cars within a second of each other.
You know, I talked to David Sturmey this morning, and he really has a good outward attitude about this change that the 12th team will be making for next year. Brad Keselowski will be moving into it. this team is part of a Daytona Goodyear tire test next week. And they had come to David several weeks ago and told him to put it on his schedule. They came to him last week and said, we're going to do this test with Brad Keselowski. And David said, it only makes sense that you do it with Brad Keselowski. That's who's going to be in the car when we get to Daytona in February. So he really has a good attitude about it and certainly knows that he's got to try to put something together for himself for 2010.
He's auditioning. Let's go to Bob.
Another qualifying run coming up for Jeff Gordon. Jeff Gordon actually moved up a couple spots on the speed charts just recently, and just listening to him on the radio with Steve Letarte, it didn't sound like he really liked the car too much, but Steve was trying to convince him, hey, we are a lot faster. So right now they just changed the left rear spring on this thing to try to help it up off the corner just a little bit, but Jeff Gordon's still not liking his car. On the other hand, Mark Martin, that's the car that he actually won Phoenix with earlier this year with that 5 car. He is liking his machine right now. He and Alan Gustafson working really well. They think they have a shot at the pole here today.
Well, he was able to do it a week ago at Richmond to kind of make things interesting there. I would not be one bit surprised. You watch all these guys line up, getting ready to try to make their qualifying attempt. The 98, the 36, the 14 of Tony Stewart. Here comes the 20 earlier this year's winner, Joey Logano, along with 33 of Boyer. There's Mark.
Right now, second quickest run, a total of 13 laps. You saw Brian Vickers kind of drive around that group. I think they continue to try to sort through the fuel pressure issues with that 83 car, because Brian right now 42nd quickest out of the 45 cars.
John Andretti also in that group getting ready to go out. He's 20th overall.
I think I was real lucky that other time. 10-4. Car's okay there? Yeah, it was better the first lap and was good the second lap. Was better. I just thought I would do better than that. Sorry about that. I hate that.
I love it when you got a driver apologizes for not going faster.
And he's second quick.
Yeah.
That lap there was a 28.97, and his fast lap is a 28.80 that he ran about the run before this.
Now have 11 drivers in the sub-29 second bracket.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Harvick is fastest at 28.77, and right now Tony Stewart is 43rd at a 29.67. So 9/10 separating 43 race cars right now, and it will get tighter when we go to qualify.
Now, you just watched Brian Vickers go in there in that third corner, Steve, lock the left front up, and I was sitting there thinking, well, that don't look very good, but he was making a qualifying attempt. And Larry, you see that quite a bit, especially during qualifying, when you really try to drive in a little bit harder. He's now 7th quickest, jumped up that chart pretty quick.
By far the fastest Toyota. In fact, the only Toyota in the top 10 right now is it's kind of saturated with Chevrolets and 2 or 3 Dodges. The fastest Ford right now is Greg Biffle, who is 15th quickest.
And Larry, we just got the report that the problem with the 83 car, after doing all the work on the fuel pump and the cable, happened to be the carburetor. They put a different carburetor on it and got it fixed.
Bob Dillner.
Well, Tony Stewart, you should see him jump up the speed charts right now. Currently 43rd quick. This is his first mock qualifying run of the day. I just spoke to Bobby Hutchins, the general manager at Stewart Haas Racing, and he said Tony's car was a mess. It was horrible at the onset of practice, but right now he's good. And how about that? He jumped all the way up from 43rd to 15th on his first qualifying lap or mock qualifying run. So Darian Grubb and the crew have been really working on this car, but it looks still a little bit loose coming up off the corner, guys.
Well, he just jumped up the second quickest, Bob, on lap 2, and then about the time I spoke, Clint Boyer knocked him back to 3rd. But that's not unusual for the second lap to be quicker, especially in these overcast conditions that we have right now. It has a little bit to do, I think, with air pressure buildup. It has a little bit to do with just flat heat in the tires.
Well, I know this is going to be kind of confusing, but unless you carry it out to the 3rd decimal point, right now, Clint Boyer and Tony Stewart on my timing chart were tied. Take a look at it like this. Kevin Harvick's at a 28.77, Boyer at 28.79, and Stewart at 28.79.
If you look at our other scoring monitor, Jeff, that you can't see, it's 1/1000th of a difference between Clint Boyer and Tony Stewart.
I mean, that's how tight and how close it really is. You got to carry it out to the thousandths now.
About 10 minutes left in this practice. Dale Earnhardt Jr., 24th overall in his Chevrolet.
There it is again. A guy counting backwards in our ears.
Yeah.
Wears me out.
Mark Robert Smith, he does it one more time.
Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup race practice from New Hampshire is brought to you by Camping World's destination recreation sweepstakes. Log on to campingworld.com/racing to enter for weekly giveaways. This week, win one of 5 deluxe recliners.
I bet you Larry's got some of those out there beside his little motor coach.
I do.
How about that view, boys? One of the best views in all of racing on the backstretch here at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. And look how the fans have their areas already, their territory marked off.
You know, that reminds me of something I think you'd see Marcus Ambrose do, almost like a gold miner. You know, he's taking off his claim right there. I claim this territory.
You think that guy's listening to us with the scanner on?
I'm just,
Waving.
All right. Got a good seat, got a stogie.
Got a
yes,
good
sir.
cigar.
Wave again. There you are.
See, he's listening to us here on Speed.
Atta boy.
All right,
Glad
we like
you're with
it.
us.
There you go.
Yeah.
He can't see us, but he can sure hear us. We appreciate that.
Some good stuff right there. But while we were watching our man staking his claim over there, Juan Pablo Montoya knocks Kevin Harvick off the top. Montoya goes to the top at a 28.74. Tops Kevin Harvick's 28.77. I think two things happening right now with these speeds really jumping up there. Obviously, everybody's making practice qualifying runs here with only about 8 minutes to go, but I think these clouds moving in is really cooling this track off. This is probably, aside from maybe Lowe's Motor Speedway, one of the more temperature-sensitive racetracks. Really gains grip when the clouds move in.
Yeah, you really like to have a nice cool and grippy day around this flat racetrack. And again, guys, I don't think we're going to be able to overemphasize the fact, we repeat, do not be surprised to see this 42 car making noise in these final 10 races. Speaking of making noise, let's see what Mr. Johnson has to offer up. Mr. Burns, what do you think?
Well, right now we got 5 Chevrolets, the fastest.
His last lap out was his fastest at a 28.85. He's only run a total of 14 laps. Jimmy actually celebrated his birthday yesterday. So he's had a busy week with being in New York with all the other chase drivers.
Yeah, but he lives in New York.
Hangs out there a lot, though.
Yeah. He got a place up there.
Jimmy actually a little slower that lap at a 28.93, but it looks like this is going to be the second lap coming, and we've seen most of the drivers pick it up on lap 2. So let's see what he does.
You know, on that first lap, I saw a lot of tire smoke entering turn 3. I wonder if he overdrove that corner.
28.82.
He runs quicker, but he doesn't move up the chart. But look at this first lap here as he goes into turn 3. See that left front lock up? That kind of makes you run up the racetrack instead of be able to turn down. That's where he lost that speed on that first lap.
But I think as these guys make these practice qualifying runs, you want to find out how deep you can go now, and that way you can adjust when you make your qualifying run later on this afternoon.
You know, Jeff, you talked about Jimmy Johnson. He and his wife also have a home just south of Charlotte, North Carolina. He and his wife just donated, I think the amount was $150,000 to the Mecklenburg County school system where Charlotte, North Carolina is located.
I believe you're right. I mean, they're big into trying to help the communities they live in and different kind of foundations or different type of groups his foundation does help.
Let's go to Wendy.
And Kevin Harvick has climbed out of his race car. Kevin, it looks like you are done for this practice session. How pleased are you with that the run today?
Yeah, our shell Benzone Chevrolet was really good in race trim, and guys have done a great job putting it over into qualifying trim too. So it's all about the second lap. You don't want to mess that one up because that's your money lap, and see how it all falls.
Seems like things are going good in the truck garage, but I did see your wife Delana putting some decals on a new truck over there.
Well, at least she's doing something today. That's good.
She's earning her paycheck. Not watching this broadcast.
That's wrong. I'm going to take the microphone away from Harvick now. Thanks, Kevin.
Better help him out and get that away from him. Otherwise, he's going to be in the doghouse.
Bob Dillner.
The crews down here in the garage area have been very, very busy. Everybody trying to get that last run in before the end of practice. This is the only practice they have here today. You see Denny Hamlin sitting right there. His prior mock qualifying run, not very good. Very loose around the racetrack. In fact, Denny got on the radio and he's been calm, cool, and collected this entire practice in race trim. Now he's in qualifying trim, and he said, we got to tighten this damn car up in all four corners. So Denny Hamlin, that crew, they came in, made the changes. They're going back out for hopefully one more run. There he goes, guys.
You know, back to Kevin Harvick, it's amazing when you look at his season. 3 top 5s, 5 top 10s. They made the announcement before Atlanta that they would be together for 2010 Richard Childress Racing and Kevin Harvick. He follows that announcement up with a second-place finish at Atlanta and then finished a strong 9th last week. It's amazing how that works.
Hey, guys, you know, we're talking about the gentleman over there on the hill listening to us here on Speed. As always, DW, he is here in spirit, but he's over at, you know, on vacation.
Nantucket, isn't he?
Nantucket, working on his tan.
But he has a good reason. Happy 40th anniversary, DW and
Yep.
Stevie.
There's our man right there. He is listening.
Dark clouds over the back stretch here at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Forecast does look good, though, for the rest of the weekend. This practice just about over. 5 Chevrolets leading the way, led by Juan Pablo Montoya.
Everybody getting these last-minute practice qualifying runs in. David Reagan in the 6th car right now. David, 32nd quickest. He's run a total of 35 laps. You get a feeling these guys were in race trim, and now they've kicked over to qualifying trim here in the closing moments of this practice session.
Cousin Carl going out to make him a qualifying run, it looks like.
Right now, Carl Edwards, 35th quickest in this 99 car.
Practice is over. We go to Bob Dillner.
How about A.J. Allmendinger, guys? He winds up this practice in the 7th slot on the timing charts, and he's very happy. Just spoke to him. A little tight in race runs, but he said the car is near perfect in qualifying trim, so they are looking forward to qualifying a little bit later on. But how about that paint scheme right there? The Berlin City number 44, reminiscent of Dave Dion. He is a veteran, a legend from up here in the New England area, has won races all over the place and has raced here at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway before in the old East Series days. So A.J. Allmendinger very happy with this race car. Wendy?
Thanks, Bob. I think it's easy to pick up what these teams are doing and how they're feeling about these race cars just listening in the first practice session today. A guy like Juan Pablo Montoya obviously very happy with his race car in this practice session. They seem calm, cool, and collected on the radio this practice as well. Some of these teams were throwing a lot at their race cars. A guy like Brian Vickers had trouble with the carburetor and the fuel pump issues, which caused them to not take the time that they wanted to focus on setup. But the 42 car, they were able to throw everything at the race car that they wanted to try. Juan Pablo fast and happy, and that's a good thing. Steve?
You know, digging into more of Jeff Hammond's information of our 12 chase drivers, now he only has 5 starts here, but Montoya has the worst average finish here of those 12 drivers.
Don't pay any attention to those numbers. This is a different.
They're your numbers, for Pete's sake.
Numbers are there to make you talk about what might be.
Hey, don't go yet. Hey, sir, I have to ask you. He's listening to us on scanner. Give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. How'd we do? All right, thumbs up.
All right.
I believe he's going to lunch, which is where I'm about ready to go.
Me too.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Hey, is it hamburgers or steaks?
Slick meat.
Steaks.
Hope you've enjoyed it.
He's had enough.
He's going to lunch. John Roberts is up next.